Grab something sweet or salty because today is a Dr. Momcast snack, a short follow up conversation sparked by the overwhelming response to our episode on gaming and digital addiction with Dr. Ed Spector. We talk about social media use in kids, how overwhelming it can be to monitor, and briefly discuss strategies and resources for parents. We also get personal and authentic, sharing relatable stories about the positives and negatives of parenting in the age of social media, and learn how Lisa called on the FBI for an assist in parenting in the digital world.
Did you all know that IRL is in real life?
Yeah.
I did when he said that. Yeah.
Wondered who was not following. Yep.
Me, like normal. I'm slow to the upload.
I was like, somebody doesn't know what IRL.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay.
I have a grocery shopping date at 9 p.m., so it's not firm.
That's what she said.
Welcome back to Dr. Momcast. I'm Dr. Marla Shapiro, here with some of my favorite sports neuropsychology colleagues,
Dr. Alyssa Wickland,
Dr. Summer Ott,
Dr. Lisa Nippold-Baca.
and we are here to talk about kids, sports, health, safety, anything else that comes up along the way. The topic has been gaming, electronics, social media. We had a great episode last week with Dr. Ed Spector talking about gaming disorder, gaming addiction. Lisa, you weren't there, but I know you listened to the episode. What were your thoughts or takeaways?
I did. I love him, and I thought it was so helpful. He had such a balanced idea and realistic too of how much media should be used. Adapt or die with technology. We can all get into our little echo chamber going, these screens are ruining our kids. It's the worst thing ever. It's frying their brains. Like, this is the future. It is what it is. So we need to figure out how to work with it and around it and adapt to it, or we're going to be edged out. The big takeaways for me, number one, when he talked about addiction versus disorder and treating this more like an eating disorder where you can't eliminate food entirely. We think about addiction like drugs or alcohol. You can't go completely zero with media because of how much kids use it, which was very notable for me.
And he highlighted that they are actually developing skills. I loved his example of you can't just play the violin for 11 years. You have to be diversified in the activities you do. That was a great point about you have to be good at both. So just even beyond social media, it's like getting our kids involved.
One of the other things I took away from it that I thought was interesting is the social community that comes with gaming. A lot of kids with autism, this is their only social network. And when he talked about the pressure, you can't just put a game down and walk away because you might be screwing over your entire team. We wouldn't, in the middle of a baseball game, say, okay, buddy, grab your bat and glove. We're going home because we have family movie night, and we need to at least appreciate the amount of social pressure and responsibility that they have to this group of people with whom they form a relationship.
I blew my son's mind this week because I said, when you get to a good stopping point in your game, could you come upstairs and help me unload the dishwasher?
Yeah. And you apparently can't push pause if you're gaming with a whole group of people. I think the misconception, and partly what I had to examine for myself, is that we think of social as face-to-face, in-person interaction and, not realizing that there is a whole social network that they have. It's in a different space.
That's a great segue to talking about social media use. A friend of mine had kept her teens off of all social media for a long time until her high school son said, Mom, you don't understand. I'm missing out on so much because people only communicate through Snapchat. I don't know about parties or the extra practice. Let's talk a little bit about social media with some of its parallels and some of its challenges.
My son and I were talking about gaming, which was the topic of our previous episode. And I segued into social media. And he said, "What, you took a left turn. Why were you talking about social media now?" It was very compartmentalized in his mind. Sometimes we're guilty of conflating all of these things. It's screen time as one big construct. I'm learning now that I've taken Dr. Spector's advice and had more conversations with my kids about their phone use, screen use, digital life, that they do compartmentalize, and games are gaming, TikTok, that's entertainment. And so I really saw him in his mind break down the utility he gets from these different platforms, which was much more nuanced than the lump sum of the screen that I usually think of.
So, Alyssa, you're saying we need to really be thinking about it. What are the purposes and the different kinds of media?
I spoke with my husband. He plays Madden video games, and I was lumping him into gamer. And he's like, Summer, I'm not a gamer. I play video games with myself. I don't connect with the network out there and play against people. I thought that was an interesting distinction too. He doesn't even foresee himself as a gamer because he doesn't have that network.
And is that more of an unwind, relax thing for him, Summer, rather than sitting down and watching a 30-minute show, for example?
I think so. He's in the military, so a lot of his military comrades would be doing the same thing. And then we all work with professional athletes, and video games is also a large part of the athletic population. And professional athletes aren't, in most situations, aren't allowed to game if there's a gambling aspect to it. But I assume that they are probably playing the game with themselves, if you will. I'm sure there's better terminology, but not necessarily playing against a whole network of other people.
We do keep saying play with yourself a lot.
Yeah, kind of felt like I was saying play with yourself a lot. You can edit that.
Solo player games. We'll have to
Thank
ask
you.
Ed.
Back to kids and social media, there really is this pressure because it is such a social connection. They aren't socializing a whole lot during school, which is what we used to do. Socialization happens outside of school, and it's all through social media, Snapchats and Snap strings, Snap chains. And so if you miss a day, it's the end of the world because you broke your Snap chain. This is one of those, as a parent, the consequence, we take the phone away. My kid loses his mind because we ruined this 400-day Snap chain that he had with his buddy. Yeah.
So
And
I
it's
would
like,
argue you should be taking the phone away. The phone access should be a privilege to be earned contingent upon appropriate, logically connected behaviors so that it's actually on him if he loses a phone, not on you.
I agree with that, Marla. But when the rubber meets the road, they're all over town riding their bikes. I want to know where they are. Taking their phone away cuts off my connection to them too, which is concerning, especially when I've just pissed them off.
I wonder how many parents have given into that guilt because of being fearful, right? That they can't connect with their kid because it's a different world. And then they've allowed them electronic use so much earlier than they ever thought they would.
Ed talked about starting to have conversations early. And it's like, why would you give a kid the keys to the car before they have their driver's license? Or if a kid's just learning how to swim, would you throw them in the damn ocean? So why not think about social media use this way? What are we allowing our kids to do? And do they have the tools with which to navigate it?
I agree. And the point that he made, there's no app out there that a 12-year-old can't find their way around. We had the Bark app, which you download on your kids' phones, and then it sends you notifications if there's any violent content, any sexual, drugs, illness. I would get a text message and basically
Suicidal concern.
I would get to see their texts. However, it didn't cover Snapchat and it didn't cover Instagram. And so it can't get you into the apps that I was most concerned with. And it's kind of a massive violation of trust. And we had conversations about that too, that my older one kept deleting it, even though I thought he wasn't able to delete it, but he did and he could. We're trying to shift our thinking that it's more of a matter of what are you doing? What are safety concerns and things that you need to be watching out for on social media? Who are you connecting with? And I'm thinking that's going to be more effective than this app that basically is an overbearing police officer for the kids, which is how they felt.
I think to Ed's point last week, it was, well, you're interested in Instagram. Tell me about that. Trying to figure out what the interest is and letting the conversation go that way. Okay, that's cool. So you think that would be a positive? Are you aware of any negatives? Trying to find out what is their knowledge? What is their interest level?
I think that makes perfect sense. And all I can think of when you're saying that is I have 3 teenagers, different sexes, different ages, time, 15 different apps that I need to have that conversation about. TikTok for entertainment, Instagram for social connectedness. I love what you're saying, and it feels so overwhelming because that would be a full-time job to have a conversation with each child about each app. And that's parenting. That's what I signed on for. And so I need to do that. But boy, does it feel a bit overwhelming.
I agree.
How could you do it in a less overwhelming way? I mean, I think that sounds exhausting as hell, honestly, Alyssa.
And here's the thing too, we've got 2 kids. So we have an older brother and a little brother. So of course the little brother's gotten to do things a lot earlier than older brother did because
Truly. Yeah.
we're older and more
Here's
tired.
scissors, go run. It's
Yes,
fine.
exactly. Let me spit shine this nook and throw it back in your mouth. So we started, and let's just call it a spade. No kid wants on Facebook, elderly website, but we let our younger son
There goes
get an
Facebook
Instagram.
sponsorship.
I know,
Yeah,
sorry. We just
waving
lost
it goodbye.
we let him have an Instagram page, and the same, we had his username, his login. And the only people he connected with were his aunts, uncles, grandparents. And so they could police it for me. We policed it. But now, as they're getting older and as these apps are getting more sophisticated, you can't see your kid Snapchat because the whole point of it is that it disappears from their phone. Of course, it's kept in the universe to be used against them when they run for president. But it's more and more difficult. And like Alyssa, what you're saying, you literally cannot monitor it. And so that's where hoping that you put up a good safety net that they'll land on if they do fall is what you rely on. And that's where having the conversations early is important.
These teenagers, though, really give you a really great explanation other than my friends do it.
Yeah. And is that a bad answer though? Because that's how they're
Yeah,
making
exactly.
plans. That's how they're connecting. That's how they know what they're all wearing for the last day of school.
We have to be comfortable sometimes with being uncomfortable and trusting our kids and not always having instant access, instant gratification. At some point, there seems to be this inverse relationship that once kids cross some certain threshold of social media, you start to see increased time associated with worsened mental health. How did Ed describe social media? He quoted Teddy Roosevelt saying, comparison is the thief of joy, and social media is made to do just that consciously and unconsciously.
What is the age, though, that it's appropriate? When do we let them stay at home by themselves for the first time? And asking for advice on that, it always came back to their maturity level. Are they safe? So it's also about maturity level at the age at which they start doing social media.
When you're talking about appropriate ages, 13 is the age kids can consent to having their data tracked. As set forth in the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, it was never intended to keep kids safe online. It was the age of consent for data tracking. So that 13 is really
Yeah.
arbitrary.
I was actually on the phone with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension yesterday because I called the FBI. This is not funny. I know it's not funny. I laugh, but it's not funny. So I sell my boys' clothing on online garage sale apps. You post a bunch of pictures, and I had this person on one of the apps who repeatedly would start a conversation. Oh, tell me about these sliding shorts, which are basically like boys' underwear with pads in the butt. And then it would end with, okay, I don't understand the size. Could you please send me a picture of your son in underwear? And this happened more than once. I tracked back and it was the same user. So I called the FBI because I figured at least get a trail started
Lisa,
on
that's
this
creepy.
clear pedophile. It is creepy. And my thought was at first, it's like, gross, ew. And then I slept on it and I'm like, what mom would have sent it? And I know that somebody would. And so the guy called me back and he had tracked the user and said that they opened a file in case somebody else reports, said, do your kids use Snapchat? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's the one that right now we are dealing with. That's the vessel for
Wow.
pedophiles who are claiming to be other kids and soliciting pictures. He didn't say delete Snapchat, get off of it, but he said, make sure you talk to them. Do you know who you're talking with? Don't interact with people who you don't know or who your friend can't vouch for and send you a real life picture of. If they claim it's their cousin, have they ever seen their cousin? Or is this somebody who just solicited them through Snapchat? It was pretty sobering.
I'm blown away that the FBI called you back.
Yeah, I called the FBI because no, we go hard here.
Yeah,
Go big or
go
home.
big or go home.
I was really
I was
pissed
like,
off.
maybe I'd call my local 311, but
There is a website you can Google to report crimes against children. I did it through email. I did not actually call. I did it through the online portal. And I was shocked that they actually called back. And he said they actually looked into it. And the guy from the St. Paul Bureau of Criminal Apprehension called me.
Ed was talking about the notion of having weekly conversations around technology. I'm on commonsense.org website. This is curriculum for schools and teachers. My kid never got that with their iPad, except they said, don't put shit on there. This is great stuff for parents for starting those conversations. First grade, internet traffic light. How do you stay safe when visiting a website or app? Second grade, that's
It's like the good touch, bad touch conversations that evolve.
I used to quiz my daughter before she would go online. Okay, if this happened, what would you do? If that happened, what would you do? And she had all the right answers when we moved and she was feeling kind of lonely. I knew something was going on. And sure enough, she was meeting people online. And she said, but they're so nice and they're so interested in me. And I'm like, oh, adult in England is really going to take that much interest. My kid was so well prepared and she fell for it.
it's the white van scenario. It's about having the conversation repeatedly. We were always taught, don't get into the van. They're going to offer you candy and
Right.
puppies. And so if you ask my kids, oh, I would never get in a van with a stranger. I guarantee you put 3 puppies out there and say there's 5 more in the van. I got 3 kids who are absolutely getting in the van. So again, it's about saying versus doing in the moment, you
Yeah.
know.
And then you take a kid who is lonely or has the impulse control of a gnat heading for a windshield. And those are the kids it's going to be trouble for.
To your point, Marla, we can have these conversations and they can give you the right answer. But Ed's point is the ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Because until it happens to someone they know or they can give you a tangible example, it's just a white van with puppies in it until it becomes something.
But they're really cute puppies. But also us
Get in the van. I mean,
know.
again, it's such a ridiculous scenario that,
I
you
would
know,
do
you
it.
got to have to keep having the conversation.
So one of the things that we talk about modeling to for our kids, I have really tried to be more mindful about my screen time. Sometimes I'm guilty of it. Why don't you look at your device when we're at a restaurant? I'm sure I get all kinds of judgments, but to have that hour of being able to eat in peace, or at least maybe part of it, when they were especially really little, that's how we survived.
You said you're guilty, and that got me
Awesome.
thinking, why do you have to feel guilty about that? I
Because
mean,
I think people are judgy, right? Or people will tell you
yes.
what their boundaries are.
And that's about them. A couple years ago, there was a woman in an airport. I think she was traveling solo with her kids, and the kids were on devices and she was on a device. And someone posted on Twitter somewhere, oh, great parenting. And people
Yeah.
really came to her defense like, you have no idea. She could have just traveled for 2 hours with a screaming baby and
Mhm.
just needed a moment to reset. You have no idea what led her to that point. It doesn't mean she's a bad parent. It means in that moment, that's what they needed. And so when you said guilty, I thought, yeah, we are judgmental about stuff like that. You may have just had the most profound conversation in the car on the way to the restaurant.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
now your kids are on a device. Who am I to say that that's a bad thing? That reminds me of our Kate Swenson
Yes.
episode, who has a son with autism, who just being able to get him out required that he have some focus on technology, not judging her, but giving her grace that, wow, it probably took her a lot just to get her son out. And technology is a big piece of that.
I agree. Kind of brings us full circle. I think this notion of social media where everything's perfect and everyone looks happy all the freaking time. End of the day, you got to do what's right for you, your kids, your family. Y'all have all answered the question of how much is too much and when. It depends. Depends in so many ways.
You always say it best, doing the best with what we got.
We have to figure out what's best for our kids and our families. And yes, doing the best we can with what we got, making the best decision we can with the info that we have. We can always look back and course correct and judge and second guess, but to trust ourselves as parents and trust our kids, teach them well and teach them from an early age.
So being very specific and intentional in connecting, not again about screens in general, but about these different arms really of their personality.
Yeah. I love that.
The takeaways is that social media is much more nuanced. It's different things to different people at different ages and different times. It has different purposes, and that we want to prepare our kids to use it well and use it responsibly. At some point, we have to cut the cord, literally and figuratively, and let them go at it and hope that we've prepared them well, because there's no safety net or app that's going to protect them fully, but to remain engaged so that when they do stumble, because they will, we're there to not judge, but to continue the conversation about how to do it different or better.
Yeah. And I think there's more conversation to be had on this too. And I hope Sonia can join us at some point, because with her resilience training talks a lot about digital resilience and the good things that come from it. Let's not forget, it's our generation who started this shit. Mark Zuckerberg did this for better or worse. And now we're blaming our kids for basically taking the baton that we've passed to them. And so part of what Sonia talks about is being your authentic self online. That's one of those things that Kate Swenson does phenomenally, puts videos and writes essays about herself sitting in the suck. I do see the pendulum swinging a little bit more that way toward authenticity. I think that there's conversations to be had too, just about the positive things that are coming from social media. If it's here to stay, we've got to figure it out.
Adapt or die.
There's so many resources. Commonsense.org is definitely an online rabbit hole for me too.
They
And
have a
no,
section for parents and for kids.
Can I just say the irony is that social media has the four of us in different corners of the country all having this amazing
I
conversation?
know.
and now in our different corners of the world, we can come together and have these conversations in real time and see each other's faces. What's the digital equivalent of put a fork in it, man?
I'm going to dip when you're going to leave the game.
Lisa's got this shopping date planned, and I would hate for her to rage quit on us because we are running over time. I personally am just going to dip out and go quietly into the night.
IRL, you have to shop.
We've expanded our vocabulary. We've talked about social media. We realize that it's not all bad and evil. And once again, we need to talk to our kids and stay connected. So, severing the connection for tonight, cutting the cord, pulling the plug.
Good night, bitches.